Welcome to Starbound. My name's Chikondi, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspire Academy and Frerin and Rimiki. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap Join below to become a Starbound member. Now let's get into today's story. Tyrannic's hands moved mechanically through the pile of discarded electronics, separating valuable components from worthless casings. Each movement released another wave of heat from the sorting pit, the temperature display on the wall reading a steady 112 degrees Fahrenheit. Rivulets of sweat traced paths down his face, neck, and back, darkening his thin recycled uniform with expanding patches. A shadow fell over his workstation. Overseer Lith, a Vectar whose amber crystalline body caught the harsh industrial lighting, loomed over him.
Rennick, you're dripping on the merchandise again.
The Vectar's voice resonated with the peculiar harmonic quality of their species. Ty wiped his forehead with his sleeve. Sorry, Overseer. I'll clean it up.
See that you do. And requisition a moisture capture suit if you insist on leaking everywhere.
Lith's faceted eyes fixed on a droplet of sweat that fell from Ty's chin, landing on the disassembled communicator below. The crystalline being shuddered, their internal lattice visibly constricting in disgust. As the Overseer moved away, Prell, a Mantisian worker at the next station, clicked her mandibles in amusement.
They really hate the human coolant system, don't they?
Seems that way, Ty muttered, wiping down his workspace. Though I don't see what's so disgusting about natural temperature regulation.
Says the being who secretes bodily fluids from every pore,
Prell responded, her compound eyes glinting with humor.
At least my exoskeleton has the decency to keep my fluids inside where they belong.
The shift bell rang, its harsh tone cutting through the cacophony of the sorting floor. Workers began securing their stations, locking away valuable components and tagging unfinished projects for the next shift. Ty stretched, feeling his back muscles protest after 8 hours of hunching over the sorting table. He followed the stream of workers toward the lifts, passing the facility bulletin board. A new notice caught his eye. Bold holographic lettering pulsing with artificial urgency. The Boil Pits, Tournament 16, registration now open. Premium shift assignments plus credit bonuses to winners. Prove your worth in the heat. Beneath the announcement cycled images from previous tournaments, transparent chambers where combatants faced off while temperature gauges climbed steadily higher. The Vectar loved these spectacles, watching lesser species struggle against heat that their crystalline bodies regulated with perfect efficiency. He joined the crush of bodies in the lift, descending 30 levels to worker habitation. The recycled air grew cooler as they dropped away from the sorting pits, though never truly comfortable by human standards. The Crucible's environmental systems were calibrated to Vectar preferences, cool and dry in administrative sections, hot only in work areas where non-Vectar labor was cheaper than proper climate control. After a quick shower in the communal facilities, lukewarm water being another Vectar cost-saving measure, Ty made his way to the medical bay in Habitation Block D. The medical bay was clean but Spartan, with outdated equipment and understaffed shifts. Ty nodded to Dr. Sennett, the overworked human physician, before making his way to the isolation room at the far end. Jem lay on the bed, eyes closed, skin sallow against the white sheets. Monitors displayed his vital signs, temperature regulation struggling, cardiovascular system under stress. Space rot. That's what the workers called it, though the official medical term was thermostatic degradation syndrome. Something about long-term exposure to inconsistent artificial environments combined with trace elements in recycled air. It primarily affected humans and other species that relied on organic temperature regulation. Hey, Ty said softly, settling into the chair beside the bed. Jem's eyes flickered open. Though 3 years younger than Ty's 28, His face bore the creased appearance of someone much older. "Hey yourself. How was the pit today?" "Same as always. Hot, smelly, full of Vectars who think sweating is obscene." Ty forced a smile. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've been spacewalked without a suit." Jem attempted to sit up, but fell back with a grimace. "Dr. Sennett was here earlier. Says there's a new treatment regimen from the core worlds. Could reverse the damage if we catch it before organ systems start failing." Ty's pulse quickened. "That's good news, right?" "Would be if we had 40,000 credits lying around. Facility insurance won't cover experimental treatments." Jem's laugh dissolved into a cough. "Maybe we should have been born Vector." Ty's gaze drifted to the tournament notice he'd pulled up on his personal device. "Maybe we don't need to be Vector to get that kind of money." Jem followed his brother's gaze and his expression hardened. "No, absolutely not. Those tournaments are rigged death traps. They're just fighting matches. In chambers hot enough to cook most species. Last tournament, 2 fighters died from heat stroke, and 1 Kilarian had his cooling bladders rupture." Jem grabbed Ty's wrist with surprising strength. "Promise me you won't sign up." Ty stared at his brother, thin and pale against the medical bay sheets. "I'll figure something out," he said, carefully avoiding a direct promise. "Get some rest." The registration office was located in the pressure valve, a dimly lit bar frequented by pit workers. The place smelled of industrial cleaners, barely masking the biological odors of a dozen different species unwinding after long shifts. Screens mounted throughout the establishment showed highlights from previous tournaments, drawing cheers and groans from the crowd as fighters collapsed or triumphed in the steadily heating chambers. Ty approached the back booth, where a slender Vector with data displays hovering around their crystalline-form processed applicants. Unlike the typical amber hue of most Vectors, this one's structure showed faint traces of blue, particularly around the outer edges. "I want to register," Ty stated, sliding his ID chip across the table. The Vector looked up, faceted eyes scanning him with unexpected intensity. "Human? Last I checked. Interesting." The Vector picked up his ID with delicate crystal appendages. "Not many humans enter. Your biology is untested." "You mean because I sweat?" Ty asked bluntly. The Vector's internal lattice shifted in what might have been surprise. "Actually, that's precisely why you might have an advantage." They leaned forward. "I'm Coril, tournament coordinator and medical observer." Ty Rennick, waste sorter, level 85. "Well, waste sorter Ty Rennick, are you aware of the tournament parameters? Fights occur in sealed chambers where temperatures begin at 110 degrees Fahrenheit and increase by 5 degrees every 2 minutes until one competitor yields or is rendered unconscious." "I work in the sorting pits. That's basically my everyday environment." "Indeed, but fighting is different from sorting trash." Coril's crystal fingers tapped across floating data screens. "What's your motivation, if I may ask? Most entrants are either desperate or stupid." "Which category do you put me in?" "I haven't decided yet." There was something in Coril's harmonic voice that Ty couldn't quite place. Curiosity, perhaps, but also something more. "My brother needs medical treatment that the facility insurance won't cover," Ty admitted. "Tournament prize would pay for it." "Ah, desperation then. The more interesting category." Coril completed the registration. "First qualifying match is tomorrow night. Chamber 2. Your opponent will be a draft-heavy worlder with specialized heat-reflecting dermal plates." Ty's confidence wavered. "Any advice?" Coril studied him, crystal structure catching the bar's dim light. "Humans cool by leaking, correct? Natural coolant through the skin?" We call it sweating, but yes.
Fascinating adaptation.
The Vectar's tone was different from the usual disgust Ty encountered.
Use your biology to your advantage, waste sorter. Outlast rather than overpower.
As Ty turned to leave, Carl added,
One more thing. Directrix Shan attends these tournaments personally. I wouldn't recommend drawing their attention unnecessarily.
Who's Directrix Sharn? Carl's crystalline form seemed to dim slightly.
The facility owner. They have particular interest in biological adaptations to extreme environments.
I'm just here for the prize money, Ty assured them.
Of course.
Carl's tone suggested they believed otherwise.
Good luck tomorrow. Try not to die of heat stroke.
Chamber 2 was a transparent cube 15 feet on each side, elevated on a platform above a roaring crowd of off-shift workers and mid-level Vectar administrators. Temperature controls and monitoring equipment surrounded the cube, operated by technicians under Carl's supervision. Ty stood in the prep area, wearing only lightweight shorts. Nearby, his opponent stretched massive limbs, the overlapping plates on their greenish skin shifting with each movement. The draft stood nearly 7 feet tall, with a body built for high-gravity environments.
"Nervous, human?"
The draft rumbled, eyes like polished onyx fixed on Ty.
"Don't worry. When you collapse, medical will bring your temperature down before permanent damage sets in. Usually."
Ty focused on his breathing, trying to ignore the whispers and pointing from the gathering crowd. He could already hear the comments.
A human? In the tournament?
This should be entertaining. How long before the leaker drops? 50 credits says he doesn't last 5 minutes once the heat ramps up.
The announcer's voice boomed through the arena.
"Welcome to the first qualifying match of Temperature Tournament 16!
Spectators roared their approval.
"Introducing our fighters from Maintenance Level 42 with 3 previous tournament appearances and a specialized cooling dermal system. Draft Heavy Worlder Korix!"
The crowd cheered as Korix raised massive arms.
"And his opponent,"
the announcer's voice took on an amused tone,
"from Sorting Level 85, a tournament newcomer with no augmentation or specialized cooling, Human Tyrannic!"
Laughter rippled through the audience, punctuated by derisive calls.
"Place your bets, folks. The chamber starts at 110 and climbs. Who will triumph and who will broil?"
Ty and Korix were led through airlocks on opposite sides of the transparent chamber. As the doors sealed behind them, Ty felt the immediate wave of heat, familiar from the sorting pits, but more intense without the circulation provided by the facility's massive ventilation system. A digital display inside the chamber showed the current temperature, 110 degrees Fahrenheit. A timer below it counted down. 2 minutes, 1:59, 1:58.
"Begin!"
The announcer's voice was slightly muffled by the chamber walls. Korix charged immediately, clearly planning to end the match before the heat became a factor. Ty sidestepped, using the draft's momentum against him. His years of moving heavy salvage had built wiry strength, but he knew better than to match power with a heavy worlder. The first exchange of blows left Ty with an aching rib and Korix with a frustrated growl. The timer hit 0, and the temperature display ticked upward, 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Sweat already covered Ty's body, his human cooling system working at full capacity. Korix, meanwhile, showed no signs of distress, thermal regulating plates shifting to disperse heat. They circled each other. Ty noticed something. Each time Korix moved rapidly, the plates took milliseconds to realign their heat-dispersing function. When Korix charged again, Ty ducked under the attack and delivered a sharp blow to the unprotected area between shifting plates. The draft grunted in surprise. The temperature climbed to 120 Fahrenheit. Ty's lightweight strategy worked until the chamber hit 125 degrees Fahrenheit. At that point, His movements began to slow, muscles protesting as core temperature rose despite his body's cooling efforts. Korix landed a heavy blow that sent him sprawling against the transparent wall. The crowd roared its approval as Ty struggled to his feet, vision blurring slightly. His body gleamed with sweat, droplets falling to the chamber floor, where they almost immediately evaporated in the intense heat.
Giving up, Lika?
Korix taunted, though Ty noticed the heavy worlder's breathing had grown more labored. The display changed again, 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Something unexpected happened. While Ty continued to sweat profusely, Korix's movements became increasingly sluggish. The thermal plates, designed for sustained moderate heat rather than rapidly escalating temperatures, began to lock up. Ty realized his advantage. His primitive biological cooling, while less efficient in absolute terms, could adapt continuously. The draft's specialized system had a breaking point. At 135 degrees Fahrenheit, Korix stumbled, thermal plates fully extended but no longer shifting to disperse heat. When the heavy worlder lunged again, Ty sidestepped and used the draft's own weight to slam him into the chamber wall. Korix didn't get up. Medical technicians rushed in as the chamber temperatures were rapidly lowered. Ty stood swaying, dripping with sweat, as the announcer's voice cut through his heat-addled awareness.
Winner by endurance, Ty Rennick!
The crowd's reaction was mixed. Surprise, confusion, and scattered applause from the non-Vector sections. As Ty was led from the chamber, a cooling pack pressed against his neck by a medic, he caught sight of Koril watching him with intense interest, data screens displaying his physiological readings. Beside the blue-tinged Vector stood a taller figure of pure amber crystal, perfectly formed and radiating authority. Directrix Sharn had indeed been watching.
You promised you wouldn't enter!
Jem's voice was weak, but his anger was evident as Ty visited him the next morning. I never actually promised, Ty countered, wincing as he sat down. His body felt like one massive bruise. And I won my first match.
By nearly cooking yourself alive, the medic told me your core temperature hit 103 degrees.
Jem struggled to sit up.
This isn't worth it.
It's 50,000 credits for the championship.
And what happens if you die in that heat chamber? Who does that help?
Ty leaned forward. I won't. That's the thing. I realized something yesterday. The Vectors think our sweat is disgusting, but it's actually an advantage in the tournaments. Most species have specific cooling adaptations that fail at extreme temperatures. Our primitive system keeps working.
Until you have heat stroke or dehydration,
Jem pointed out. I'll be careful. I just need to win 4 more matches. Jem fell back against his pillows, too exhausted to argue further.
Just don't push it too far. No prize money is worth your life.
Yours is, Ty said quietly. Over the next week, Ty fought 3 more matches, each against competitors with increasingly sophisticated cooling adaptations. A Merlician with specialized heat-radiating membranes, a cybernetically enhanced human, a Varel whose biology allowed them to temporarily shift excess heat into a pocket dimension. He defeated them all, not through superior strength or skill, but through the simple, relentless efficiency of human sweat glands working at maximum capacity. Each victory increased his reputation among the facility workers. They began calling him the Persistence, placing bets on how long his opponents would last rather than if he would win. After his semi-final victory, Ty sat in the medical recovery area, intravenous fluids replenishing what he'd sweated out during the match. His body temperature had hit dangerous levels, and the medics had insisted on monitoring him for at least an hour.
Remarkable recovery rate,
a familiar harmonic voice observed. Ty looked up to see Coral entering the recovery room, crystal form catching the harsh medical lights. Tournament coordinator checking on the merchandise? Ty asked dryly.
Actually, I'm here in my capacity as a physiological researcher.
Carl approached, pulling up data screens showing Ty's medical readings.
Your performance has been illuminating.
Glad to provide entertainment.
Not entertainment. Education.
Carl's faceted eyes fixed on him.
The vector understanding of biological cooling systems is limited by our own physiology. We regulate temperature through internal lattice shifts, essentially changing the crystalline structure to absorb or release heat.
Sounds efficient.
It is, within certain parameters, but it has limitations.
Carl hesitated.
May I show you something? In private?
Ty eyed the vector suspiciously. What kind of something?
Something that might help you in the final match against Prismat.
The name sent a chill through Ty despite the recovery room's warmth. Prismat was the tournament champion for the past 3 cycles, a vector whose crystal structure had been specifically modified for heat resistance. Rumors claimed they had never even shown signs of discomfort, even when chamber temperatures approached 150 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm listening. Carl glanced around before lowering their voice.
Not here. My research laboratory. After your recovery period.
You have a private lab? I thought all research spaces were directrix controlled.
Official ones, yes.
Carl's crystal structure seemed to dim slightly.
Mine is unofficial. Will you come?
Ty studied the unusual vector. Everything about Carl felt off compared to other members of their species. The blue tinge to their crystal, their interest in other species' biology, the way they operated just slightly outside normal vector behavioral patterns. Lead the way. Carl's laboratory was a repurposed maintenance room deep in the mechanical levels of the Crucible. Unlike the stark efficiency of official vector spaces, this room was cluttered with makeshift equipment, biological samples, and data screens showing comparative anatomy studies of dozens of species.
Welcome to my sanctum,
Carl said, securing the door behind them.
Few non-vectors have seen this place.
I'm honored, Ty replied dryly. What's with all the biology studies? Don't you people consider other species' physiologies disgusting?
Most vectors do, yes.
Carl moved to a workstation, crystal fingers dancing across controls.
I find them fascinating.
Why the difference? Carl was silent for a moment, internal lattice shifting in what Ty had come to recognize as the vector equivalent of hesitation.
Because I am different.
Carl turned, and to Ty's shock, extended one crystalline arm under a harsh light. Under the direct illumination, Ty could see tiny fractures throughout the blue-tinged crystal structure, and from these fractures, beads of clear fluid emerged. You're leaking, Ty said in disbelief.
A genetic anomaly, extremely rare among vectors. Microfractures in my crystalline structure release cooling fluid under heat stress or emotional duress.
Carl's harmonic voice held a note of bitterness.
A disgraceful defect by vector standards.
So that's why you're interested in human sweating. You do it too.
In a crude analog, yes. Though I cannot regulate it as effectively as humans can.
Carl dimmed the light, concealing the evidence of their biological difference.
My structure should have been shattered and recycled at manifestation when the anomaly was detected. But Directrix Sharn saw potential in studying the defect.
Sharn knows about this?
Sharn knows everything that happens in the Crucible.
Carl brought up new data screens.
But they don't know about my private research or my sympathy for the biological cooling methods they consider primitive.
The screens displayed detailed analysis of the tournament, focusing specifically on Ty's matches. You've been studying me.
I've been studying everyone, but your performances have been particularly noteworthy.
Carl highlighted physiological data.
Most competitors rely on specialized adaptations with specific failure points. Your system is inefficient but remarkably robust. The simple evolutionary solution often proves the most reliable.
Thanks, I think. But how does this help me against Prismat? Carl's crystal structure brightened.
Prismat's modifications are impressive, but fundamentally flawed. They've sacrificed lattice flexibility for heat resistance.
Meaning?
Meaning their crystal structure is more rigid, stronger, but potentially more brittle under the right conditions.
Carl pointed to simulation models.
If you can create rapid temperature differentials across their surface, microfractures might form.
And how exactly would I do that? Carl hesitated.
Your body produces significant moisture. If applied strategically to Prismat's crystal surface while they're at peak heat absorption...
Ty stared. You want me to sweat on them deliberately? That's your brilliant strategy?
Thermal shock is a known weakness in modified vector structures.
Carl's tone became defensive.
I'm trying to help you.
Why? What do you get out of me winning? Carl turned away, crystal form catching the lab's dim light.
Let's just say I have my reasons for wanting to see Directrix Sean's perfect champion defeated.
Before Ty could press further, an alert chimed from Carl's communication device. The Vector's crystal structure dimmed dramatically as they read the message. What is it? Ty asked.
Directrix Sean is requesting my presence.
Carl's harmonic voice had lost its resonance.
Immediately.
Is that unusual?
Very.
Carl began hastily shutting down the laboratory systems.
You need to leave. Now. Take the maintenance shaft 2 levels up, and then use the secondary worker transit. Don't go back to the medical bay. Return directly to your habitation block.
You're scaring me, Ty said, rising to his feet. What's happening?
Sean never requests me directly unless...
Carl stopped abruptly.
Unless they suspect something. The semi-final match. Your performance was too remarkable. It would have triggered automated alerts.
Ty moved toward the door, but Carl caught his arm, crystal fingers cool against his skin.
Be careful. The final match is tomorrow. Prismat won't just be fighting for the championship. They'll be fighting to prove Vector superiority.
The unusual Vector's faceted eyes caught Ty's.
Remember what I showed you about thermal differentials. It may be your only advantage.
Ty didn't make it to visit Jem that evening. When he tried to access the medical bay, his ID was denied with a message indicating Security Protocol Review. A knot formed in his stomach as he returned to his habitation unit. The next morning, his access was restored with a new message. Tournament finalist medical clearance granted. Report to Boyle Pit Arena at 1800 hours. The worker canteen hummed with excitement when Ty entered for his meal. Conversations hushed as he passed, then erupted into speculation behind him. A Mantisian worker slipped him extra protein portions with a whispered, "For strength, persistence." Near the exit, a maintenance technician in drab coveralls bumped into him, apologized, and continued on. It wasn't until Ty reached the lift that he noticed the small data chip that had been pressed into his palm during the collision. In the privacy of a maintenance alcove, he accessed the chip's contents on his personal device. The message was text only. Caril being held for recrystallization procedure. Previous winner's rewards equals biological experimentation, not payment/promotion. Your brother moved to special medical observation in Administrative Sector 3. Directrix changing tournament parameters for final. Temperature protocols overridden. Be prepared, not alone. The message deleted itself after he read it, the chip fusing into useless material in his hand. The arena was packed beyond capacity for the final match. Workers from every level of the Crucible had crowded in, many sacrificing pay by skipping shifts. The betting pools had reached unprecedented levels, with non-vectars overwhelmingly backing the Persistence, while administrative vectars placed fortunes on Prismat. From the preparation area, Ty could see Directrix Sharn in a private observation box, their perfect amber crystal form radiating authority. Unlike previous matches, Coril was nowhere to be seen among the tournament officials.
Final match preparations complete,
A Vectar medical technician announced, running cursory scans on Ty.
Chamber temperature calibration verified at starting point of 120 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 degrees above standard protocol. Authorized by Directrix Sharn for championship bout.
Ty's heart raced. They were starting the match hotter than normal, giving him less time before reaching dangerous levels. "Where's Overseer Coril?" he asked. The technician's crystal structure stiffened.
Overseer Coril has been reassigned. Specialist Drath will monitor biological responses for this match.
The announcer's voice boomed through the arena, introducing Prismat first. The undefeated champion, the perfect specimen of Vectar engineering, biological miracle of heat adaptation. The crowd of administrative Vectars hummed in harmonic appreciation as Prismat entered the arena, their crystal structures catching the lights in dazzling patterns of amber perfection. When Ty was introduced, the worker sections erupted in cheers, while the Vectar sections remained pointedly silent. He walked toward the chamber, heart pounding, muscles tense with anticipation and fear. Inside the transparent cube, the heat hit him immediately. 120 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough that his body began sweating before the match even began. Across from him, Prismat stood motionless, their crystalline form showing no reaction whatsoever to the temperature. The countdown began. The match rules were explained. Then the signal to begin. Prismat moved with shocking speed for a crystalline being, closing the distance before Ty could properly set his stance. The first blow caught him in the ribs, crystal hard and precise. The second struck his jaw, sending him sprawling against the chamber wall. The temperature display ticked upward, 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Ty rolled away from the next attack, using the chamber's limited space to keep distance between them. He needed time for his body to adjust to the heat, for his cooling system to stabilize.
Pathetic!
Prismat's voice resonated through the chamber, the harmonic tones sharper than normal Vectar speech.
Your primitive biology fails you already!
The modified Vectar was right. Ty's movements were already slowing as his core temperature rose. At this rate, he wouldn't last long enough to implement Coril's strategy. 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Prismat landed another crushing blow, this one to Ty's shoulder. Pain shot through his arm as something cracked. The crowd noise seemed to fade as he focused entirely on survival, on keeping moving despite the increasingly brutal heat. The next few moments blurred together, a desperate dance of evasion punctuated by Prismat's relentless attacks. Ty landed occasional counterblows, but they seemed to have no effect on the modified Vectar. 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Ty's vision began to blur, muscles trembling with the effort of movement in the intense heat. His body was slick with sweat, the chamber floor wet beneath his feet. Through the transparent walls, he could see Directrix Sharn watching with evident satisfaction. 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Prismat caught him with a sweeping strike that sent him crashing to the floor. As he struggled to rise, the Vectar loomed over him.
Your leaking cannot save you, human! Our evolution is superior in every way!
Something in the taunt triggered a moment of clarity in Ty's heat-addled mind. Evolution. Adaptation. Coril's words about thermal shock and microfractures. With a desperate surge of energy, Ty lunged forward, wrapping his sweat-soaked arms around Prismat's crystal form. The Vectar, surprised by the direct contact, something no opponent had ever attempted, tried to pull away. Ty held on, pressing his moisture-covered body against the superheated crystal. He felt his skin burn where it contacted Prismat's surface, but he maintained his grip, focusing every remaining ounce of strength on creating the thermal differential Carl had described. At first, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, a sound, high-pitched almost beyond hearing, a vibration running through Prismat's form. The first crack appeared where Ty's sweat-drenched palm pressed against the Vectar's shoulder, a tiny fissure in the perfect crystal. Then another, and another. Prismat's harmonic voice rose in alarm.
Release me! This is not permitted contact!
Ty held tighter, his consciousness fading as the chamber temperature reached 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Through blurred vision, he saw the cracks spreading across Prismat's surface, networking like lightning through the modified crystal structure. With a sound like shattering glass, Prismat's outer crystal layer fractured completely, shards falling to the chamber floor as the Vectar collapsed. Alarms blared. The chamber temperature plummeted as emergency protocols activated. Medical teams rushed toward the arena as Ty fell unconscious beside the shattered form of the champion. He woke to chaos. Ty found himself being carried through maintenance corridors by two workers in environmental suits. His body ached, skin tender from heat exposure, but someone had applied cooling packs to his core areas. "What's happening?" he managed to croak, throat painfully dry.
"Rebellion of sorts,"
one of the workers answered, voice muffled by their suit.
"Or negotiation with extreme leverage, depending how you look at it."
They brought him to what appeared to be an abandoned storage area, converted into a makeshift command center. Environmental workers huddled around control panels, while security feeds displayed various sections of the crucible. And in the center, coordinating activity with rapid precision, stood Carl. The Vectar's blue-tinged crystal form was slightly dimmed compared to when Ty had last seen them, with new visible fracture lines along one side. But they were very much not recrystallized. "You're alive," Ty said as they carried him to a medical cot. Carl turned, faceted eyes brightening.
As are you, surprisingly.
"What's going on?"
Currently, environmental system override throughout the crucible.
Carl gestured to the control panels.
Administrative levels are experiencing temperatures of approximately 110 degrees Fahrenheit and rising, while worker sections are enjoying unprecedented cooling.
"You're holding them hostage with temperature?"
Poetic, isn't it?
Carl's harmonic voice carried an unfamiliar note. Amusement? Pride?
While Directrix Shan was focused on making an example of you in the tournament, my associates were installing override controls in key environmental nodes.
"Your associates?"
Maintenance workers, mostly. Those who keep the crucible functioning, but remain invisible to administrative notice.
Carl approached, running a scanner over Ty's injuries.
You've made quite an impression on them, Persistence.
"And Jem, my brother?"
Extracting him from Administrative Sector 3 was our first priority.
Carl pointed to a corner where, to Ty's shock, Jem sat on another cot, looking pale but alert.
He's been receiving proper medical care, the kind normally reserved for Vectar administrators.
Ty struggled to sit up. "I don't understand. Why all this? The tournament? The rebellion? What's the point?" Carl was silent for a moment, crystal structure shifting in that peculiar way that indicated deep thought.
The crucible processes waste from 12 star systems, separating valuable materials for reuse, they finally said. But the truly valuable resource has always been the workers themselves, specifically their biological adaptations.
Ty's blood ran cold. "The message on the data chip about experimentation."
Directrix Shan has been studying adaptive traits for decades, looking for ways to incorporate them into Vectar physiology. Tournament winners weren't promoted. They were studied, dissected in some cases.
And you know this because...
Because I was supposed to be designing the next generation of improvements.
Carl's voice lost its harmonic quality, becoming almost harsh.
My genetic anomaly makes me uniquely qualified to understand biological cooling systems, and uniquely sympathetic to those who possess them naturally.
Before Ty could respond, alerts sounded from the control panel. One of the workers called out,
Incoming communication from Administrative Level 1. Directrix Sean requesting negotiation parameters.
Carl moved to the controls, crystal form catching the harsh emergency lighting.
Put it through.
The security feed shifted to show Directrix Sharn, their perfect amber crystal now showing signs of stress, faceted surface dulled by the heat of their surroundings.
This insurrection is pointless.
Sharn's harmonic voice resonated even through the poor quality feed.
The Crucible cannot function without proper authority structure.
The Crucible cannot function without its workers,
Coral countered.
Workers who deserve proper environmental conditions and medical care, not exploitation and experimentation.
The negotiations that followed were tense and complex. Temperature levels gradually adjusted up or down as concessions were made or withheld. Throughout it all, Ty drifted in and out of consciousness, his body still recovering from the extreme heat stress of the final match.
Temperature in Administrative Sector 2 will decrease by 5 degrees when worker medical benefits are expanded to include thermostatic degradation syndrome,
Coral stated, their crystal structure glinting under the emergency lights.
Outrageous!
Sharn countered, their own crystalline form showing subtle signs of heat distress.
The cost would be prohibitive.
Less prohibitive than the complete shutdown of waste processing that will occur if your administrative staff continues to suffer from rising temperatures,
Coral observed coolly.
I notice fracture patterns beginning to form along your upper lattice, Directrix. Most concerning.
The negotiations continued for hours, a delicate balance of threats and concessions. As Ty's condition stabilized, he found himself drawn into conversations with the maintenance workers who had orchestrated the rebellion.
We've been watching you since your first match,
explained Tella, a Mantisian environmental technician.
When a human started winning through sheer persistence rather than specialized adaptation, it sparked something in the worker sectors.
I was just trying to help my brother, Ty admitted, watching as Jem received treatment from a proper medical unit, equipment quietly repurposed from Administrative Sector 3.
Sometimes the most important revolutions start with the most personal motivations,
Tella replied. By the third day of negotiations, an uneasy settlement had been reached. The Crucible would implement balanced environmental conditions throughout worker and administrative sections. Medical care would be standardized across species. And most critically, a worker council would be established with representatives from all species to address ongoing concerns. They've agreed to everything? Ty asked incredulously as Coral reviewed the final terms.
Not from generosity.
Coral's harmonic voice carried a note of grim satisfaction.
We've maintained leverage by threatening to release documentation of their experimentation program to core world authorities. Even Vector High Command would find Sean's methods ethically problematic.
As facility operations slowly returned to normal, Ty found himself appointed to the newly formed Worker Council as the human representative, a position he neither sought nor felt qualified for. I'm a waste sorter, not a politician, he protested when Coral informed him of the appointment.
And that's precisely why you are needed,
the unusual Vector replied.
This council cannot be filled with politicians if it's to have any meaningful impact.
In the days that followed, Ty split his time between council duties, visiting Jem, whose treatment was proceeding with remarkable success, and increasingly frequent meetings with Carl in their laboratory. These meetings began as discussions about environmental regulations and species-specific needs, but gradually shifted toward more personal territories. Ty found himself fascinated by Carl's unique perspective, a Vectar who understood what it meant to be different, to be considered defective for biological functions beyond one's control.
"Your cooling system was the key, you know,"
Carl told him one evening as they reviewed improvement plans for the sorting pit's ventilation.
"Not just to winning the tournament, but to everything that followed."
"My sweating? The thing every Vectar finds disgusting?"
"The thing that saved you, and by extension, all of us."
Carl's crystal structure brightened slightly.
"It proves adaptation takes many forms, and no single approach is universally superior."
"Philosophical conclusions from leaked bodily fluids," Ty remarked with a wry smile. "Not where I expected this all to end up."
"It hasn't ended," Carl corrected. "The Directrix has agreed to our terms, but Sean will be looking for opportunities to reassert control. This is merely the beginning of a long process."
Ty studied the blue-tinged Vectar, noticing how the lighting caught the microscopic fractures in their crystalline form. Fractures that leaked cooling fluid under stress, just as his human skin released sweat. Two different evolutionary paths arriving at similar solutions. The beginning, huh? Ty extended his hand, palm damp with the perpetual slight moisture of human skin. "I can work with that." After a moment's hesitation, Carl extended their crystalline hand in return. Where their palms met, small droplets of moisture, sweat from Ty's skin, cooling fluid from Carl's fractures, mingled between them. Two leakers, whose biological similarities had sparked an unlikely alliance.
"I believe," Carl said, faceted eyes catching the light, "we can work with that indeed."
In the weeks that followed, the Crucible transformed. Balanced environmental conditions made work more efficient across all sections. Medical care improvements decreased absenteeism. The Worker Council, while still finding its footing, provided a voice for concerns that had festered for decades. Directrix Sharn remained in power, their perfect amber crystal structure as commanding as ever in public appearances. But those close enough to observe carefully might notice the faint network of microfractures spreading beneath the surface, physical reminders of their defeat by a primitive human cooling system and the rebellion it had inspired. The Boil Pit Arena was repurposed as a recreation space, with environmental controls that could be adjusted to suit any species' preferences. The tournaments were officially ended, though unofficial competitions occasionally took place under strict medical supervision, tests of endurance and adaptation rather than battles to unconsciousness. Ty and Carl could often be found in their off hours, sometimes training together, sometimes simply talking while observatory windows displayed the slow rotation of the Crucible against the backdrop of space. Human and Vectar, waste sorter and researcher. Unlikely allies whose biological differences had ultimately revealed their most important similarities. And when the temperature occasionally rose, neither minded the other's cooling response. Drops of moisture that fell to the floor between them, no longer a source of disgust, but a reminder of the adaptation that had changed everything.